thanks again for doing this. I really appreciate it. I just found the story so fascinating. So basically for the listeners, or the viewers, you had a vegan restaurant for what was it, 13 years. And then after doing some research and life experience and farming and stuff, you decided to add meat to the menu and animal products because of this new farming that you feel like is more sustainable. And then people protested your restaurant. It's crazy.
Yes, all that is true. I was a vegan chef in Los Angeles. I've turned into a cattle farmer in Texas. How does that happen? Is a long and complicated, twisty path. But yes, essentially, I realized that regenerative farming is foundationally the most important thing that we're not doing right now. It's to farming for the soil, and soil is the foundation of all of life. 70% of the microbiology in healthy soil is compatible with the microbiology in humans. We're meant to eat of the soil. And by having this degraded soil that's essentially being treated almost like a medium in a hydroponic grow, where it's just we're just adding the chemicals on top and extracting food, that's not sustainable. It's also having us have this crazy industrial microbiome that is not serving our health. And if we look at all of the metabolic conditions that we're suffering from and struggling from, much of it could go back to the gut microbiome. And I'm obsessed with this when I figured it out. And I thought, well, why isn't this the most important conversation that everybody's having? Why aren't we at every cocktail party? So oh my God, the microbiome, it's so amazing. But that's not what's going on. And so I decided to start my own farm so I could compost all the compost out of the restaurant and not be, contributing to the land food waste in the landfills. And I thought I could have a vegan farm, and I was wrong. You can't, there is no healthy ecosystems without animals. And you can choose to eat animals or not eat animals for karmic reasons, for whatever you want, for health reasons. But the idea, and I think those are totally valid choices. I don't actually personally eat meat, but the idea that my plate has less death on it than the next person's is not true. And I realized that we have to be eating for less poison, and we have to be eating for the ecosystem and the soil. And so the question is, does your food create more life or less life? And that is the question I want to be asking. And that is the question that I want to be eating into. And so that's what I decided to shift my restaurants. And that's what's going on right now. And the vegans are not happy with me.
Well, and you're still serving vegan food. You're just doing both.
70%.
Giving people choices. Yeah.
Foundationally, many of the menus is vegan, and then you could add carne asada. So for example, we had a bowl called the Brazilian bowl on our menu for a long time, and it's rice and vegetables and plantains and mushrooms and leeks and guacamole and pico de gallo. And you can have that with carne asada added to it, or you can have it the way it was designed, like that.
And all the meat in your restaurant is sustainably because that was a big thing in California. I know they had this pig law that they voted for. It passed, and they said you can't raise pigs the way they're being raised because it's inhumane. And everybody said yes. And then somebody, I don't know if it was the Supreme Court or the state court or somebody, knocked it down and said no, because it would raise the cost of pigs, right? So that's a bit, and people were mad. You're having pigs and they're being killed, but you only have wild boar on the menu, right?
Yes. So that was just, I made that video to answer some of the people's upset questions, because I'm really in it to be a bridge. But so first thing I want to say is I hate the word sustainable. No disrespect to you, but
yeah. Okay. Regenerative. Is that a better?
Yeah. But to sustain means to stay the same and to just keep going and just keep it the way it is. Well,
right.
I would say that the way it is not working. And I'm not a climate alarmist. I'm not there's an existential threat to everything. But I am of the belief we all eat food, and the cumulative poisons that go into our body are going to have an impact, and that we are on this planet, and we can and should be the keystone species to drive the nature expression in the right direction, and we're not. But just like carbon, 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 carbon by Teslas and solar panels and windmills, like that's ridiculous. And I think that's the hard thing for people to like wrap their head around with me is I'm an environmentalist. Nobody can question my environmentalism, but I'm also not a fear carbon kind of person either. And I'm a vegetarian, and I'm saying that
Right.
a grass-fed beef is the most sustainable food on the planet, if you're going to use the word sustainable. But I would say that grass-fed, grass-finished beef is supporting ecosystems and life more than kale. If you look at a field of kale and you're driving past and you see a field of kale or a field of corn, or like how much life is in that field other than the kale and a little bit of microbiology, but you've tilled the soil every year, and every time you till, it does immeasurable damage to 25%. And I just saw a new study that said 58% of life on the planet lives in the topsoil. I was up until this point under the impression it was 25%, but let's say somewhere between 25 and 58% of life on the planet lives in the top 8 inches of topsoil, and we till through it every year. So there's very little life in that cornfield or that kale field. But if you go out to the pasture where my cows are grazing and they're getting moved every single day, there's so much life. There's deer and baby deer and jackrabbits and squirrels and foxes and all of that. And so I want to do farming that supports the multitude of life on the planet and take our spot as the keystone species, rather than letting whatever happen to us. And that's what's been happening. We have not taken our stepped into our role as the keystone species and our ability to shift what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of the things that woke me up was like seeing, I don't know if you've seen like Food Incorporated 1 and 2. I mean, I guess you're kind of like living it with the farm, but you know, you see how they've turned all this like meat and chickens, like putting them in these cages where they're crapping on each other, and the chickens can't even walk. And it's so sad. And so I look at that and I go, okay, can't we all agree this is not the way? This does not seem right. This seems like a breeding ground for disease and inhumane to the animals. And so even if as an omnivore, I'm not a full carnivore, but I eat meat and vegetables, like can't we all, in the vegans and the carnivores, can't we all agree this is not how you should treat animals? And you're kind of more in the middle too. And you're trying to treat these animals humanely, and then people are getting mad at you. It just makes no sense to me.
Well, because their line is no death at all. And the thing about that is like no breed defeat. So there's a distinction in the vegan, and I understand, like I want to say like I understand, but there's a distinction of intentional death versus accidental death. And so my point is there's no food without death.
Right. That's like we were saying with the kale farm and the tilling the soil, you're killing all these rodents and bugs and I mean smaller animals, but they're still animals.
Yes. I mean, rabbits and foxes and squirrels are around the same size as chickens. And so, I mean, it's like the same, but my thought is really, but then even bigger than that, all of the fertilizer for organic produce is coming from the factory farm system. It's all blood meal and bone meal and chicken shit coming out of that factory system.
Yeah, explain that to me. What is the difference between organic farmed and non-organic? Because non-organic, obviously they're using pesticides, but you have to do something to farm organically, right?
So, it's just organic and conventional are really just about what you're allowed to spray and what you're allowed to fertilize with. And so conventional farming, you can basically use chemicals of war, and we are using chemicals of war on our food. And
organic?
No, on conventional.
Oh, okay.
And then organic, you can use chemicals that are less harmful. But
so you're still using chemicals?
Yes, but they're just organic. They're on your OSP, which is like your approved. I can't remember what OSP stands for, but you have to tell the organic certifier you're using it, and then it has to be approved by them. And it's like chemicals that are off their Omni certified list that is like appropriate. But that you can't use, basically part of the thing is you don't use petroleum-based fertilizers.
Hmm.
And so the fertilizers are coming from natural sources of nitrogen. Well, anything that is protein breaks down to be high percentages of nitrogen. And so what you've got to think about is everything that is growing with outside nitrogen that's not coming from a farm is not coming from uh fossil fuels, and not I don't like that term either, but coming from petroleum based fertilizers are coming from animals. So it's either chicken poop, cow poop, blood from the cow, blood from the chicken, bones from cows and chickens. And those do not have to be organic. So you can have chickens in a chicken farm, all like you were saying, all on top of each other. And then those can be pooping. And then that poop can be taken up and used as fertilizer in an organic farm. But all that poop is coming from Roundup Ready corn and soy that was being fed to chickens.
That's not good. And we
And
don't know, we don't have no visibility with that. There's no
no visibility.
label.
No. But then if you're like, I have a certified organic farm, or did have a certified organic farm in California, and we couldn't get our eggs certified because every year I pick up straw from this big Halloween thing, and I get the straw for just a couple dollars a bale, and we use it for bedding for our chickens in the nest boxes. Because I use that straw, my eggs can't be certified organic. But I could take the poop from those chickens from the other thing and put it on the kale, and that kale is certified organic. So you see,
Oh,
to me, the system doesn't exactly work. But regenerative is not about basically just what you put on or what you don't put on, which is really the organic standards. But regenerative is taking a more broad approach. And what they're saying is you have to build soil organic matter in the ground year over year. And then however much soil organic matter you're building, 20% of that is likely to be carbon. And so then you're drawing down carbon. And again, carbon. People are freaking out about carbon. So that's what people focus on. Forget about the carbon. I'm saying healthy soil makes healthy people, healthy food, which makes healthy people and healthy animals. It's all together. And we need to go back to the kind of farming where we're resilient. And right now we're not resilient because we got a pig farmer who's just buying corn and soy to feed his pigs. And then he has all this poop. He has to find a way to get rid of the poop. He's got a lagoon. He's got this. And then you got a vegetable farmer over here that's like buying fertilizer and doesn't have any animals. And we got to get back to a system where what we call on-farm inputs, like where you have some animals and those animals are pooping, and then that becomes the fertilizer. Where
right.
the more overall working system. The other thing you want to think about is the year over year. I like to think about the soil like a bank account. So are you giving more to the soil or are you taking more? And that's really the foundation of regenerative agriculture, is that you're leaving the soil better than you found it year over year, instead of an extractive relationship where you're just taking and taking more and more.
Interesting. Well, and talk about, I've heard you talking about methane and like food waste, that you feel like food waste is the bigger thing that no one's talking. Everyone's carbon, climate change, but the methane from food waste is a bigger issue in your opinion.
Yes. But again, I think this obsessing about atmospheric gases rather than obsessing about how we can shift. I think so methane, the number one cause of methane is food scraps. It's not cow farts. 2 point something percent of the methane that we put out is supposedly cow farts. And I say supposedly because in the 1500s and the 1400s, there was far more buffalo than we have cows today. And there's no evidence that there was like a huge methane when we take these ice core samples and look at what the atmospheric was doing. There's no huge amounts of methane from the 14 and 1500s where there's millions and millions of buffalo. So, but when cows are on a pastured system, peeing and pooping and doing all the things that they're meant to be doing, there's also something called methanotropes, which is a microbiology in the soil that's absorbing the methane. So I think that we need to stop worrying so much about methane, about carbon, and start worrying about growing soil organic matter and growing life in the soil, and all the rest of it is going to balance, because like the world is meant to cycle carbon up and down and up and down. It's meant to be able to manage these things. We just aren't focusing on the right things, right? Can we sink a millions of carbon into this technology? Like, yeah, the greatest technology for sinking carbon is sunshine, grass, and cows. And imagine that God already invented it.
Right. It's crazy because I was just in my home state of Washington. I'm driving through, we're in the countryside. It's so beautiful. And I'm looking out and there's cows in the pasture just eating grass. I'm like, how can anyone say like this is bad for the environment? I mean, I get when you're stacking them on top of each other in a warehouse and they're in their own filth. I mean, that seems wrong.
Yeah,
The cows eating in the farm, that seems totally normal to me.
totally normal. I just made a reel the other day and it got much less views than all my rest of my reels. And it was just my cows in the pasture. And I said, if you think this is the problem and
Yeah.
your Tesla is the solution, you are disconnected from nature. If you think this is the problem and windmills and solar panels are the solution, you are disconnected. It's like this, just the cows in the pasture and butterflies and bees. And I'm
Oh,
thinking, how could this be? But I do think that methane is a lot coming from food scraps, but it's again, the factory farming system is also going to have that same effect that food scraps in a landfill is having. If it's not breaking down and turning into soil organic matter, it's putrefying and putting gases up. And so cows stacked on top of each other, for sure. The thing about cow farts, and now I just read this thing that tried to tell me that cows eating grass make more methane than cows in consolidated feedlots eating corn and soy. And I was literally, someone sent it to me and I said,
was this like sponsored by Tyson Foods or
that's
something?
what I said. I said, I want to see who paid for that science, because 98% of the time the science agrees with the person who's paying for the science.
Yeah, it's weird how that works. So you're going up against all these obstacles. Is anyone on your side? I mean, I guess there's like some podcasters like myself. I know you did my buddy Food Lies. You did that podcast. That's so cool. Like, is that helping you and getting more people on your side and kind of coming around to understand this?
No, we're actually in pretty dire straits right now. I'm not going to be able to continue for much longer if we don't have a shift. A lot of people in the food movement and in the podcast world have been really trying to support, but it's so odd. It is not translating into people in the restaurants.
Hmm.
And I would think in LA, in Echo Park, being able to go and get a venison patty melt, wild harvested venison
Yeah.
from Texas, or a bison burger, or um a hamburger that's from Stimple Creek right there in California, like supporting American farmers, supporting California farmers, supporting harvesting wild. I mean, there's not like a major amount of mountain lions here in Texas. If you're from Washington, so it's probably similar there. Without a hunting season for deer, there's literally would be too many deer. If you are
Right.
they're on the
I
side
just
of the
had Ted Nugent on. He was explaining that to me. Like, if we don't hunt all these deer, then the land won't support them, and then they'll freeze to death in the winter. And so that's why they have these like huntings in the fall, right? Isn't that like there's a whole system behind this?
Yeah, because you want to cull the deer before the cold season so that there's enough dry grass and stuff for them to eat. And it you can't believe how many people, I just saw JP Spears the other day. We were both talking at an event, and He went
I
on
love
right.
that guy.
Yeah, he's great.
He's
Um,
hilarious.
he was saying that there's no natural predators to deer anymore. And then he was joking. He was like, "Have you seen the pickup truck? The pickup truck is because they get hit by cars all the
Nah,
time." And
bad.
so I would think that, and then even the vegans that are upset with me would be inspired by the idea of, okay, well, we're just wild harvesting. They had their good life, and it's the same as getting eaten by a lion, because nobody's mad at a lion when they get, I mean,
Right. These
nobody's mad.
deers are not dying in a hospital bed of old age.
No, and that's what people always say, like, oh, you're sending your cows to slaughter at 2.5 to 3 years old. That's a percentage of their natural lifespan. Well, I don't know what you mean, because do we think there's 14-year-old deer out in the hills here in the hill country of Texas? Like, I don't know, but my experience is that the wild is crazy harsh, and mothers push their own children out for food competition as soon as they can hunt, and male, almost every kind of species, the males get pushed out or are not allowed to reproduce in the kinder systems, and are pushed out to just die on their own in the less kind systems. Like, that's literally what the wild is like. And so when people say, like, oh, it's so messed up, my thought is, my cows have an awesome life with all organic food, and they get moved every day to different pasture, and they love us and we love them. And yeah, the boy cows at 2.5 years get turned into subsistence for my family and other families. And I don't think that that's bad. I don't, I was talking to my dad today because I was raised vegetarian, and I never saw any harvesting of animals or any of that when I was a child. And I am not good at it. I'm not good at being around it. I get upset. I have like anxiety, and my kids have been around it a fair amount. And my husband said both things. I mean, my dad said both things are okay. Like, no matter how many times you take the life of an animal, you feel something. And if you don't feel something, then you're disconnected to what's going on. And I don't think it's bad, because you're 98% of people on the planet eat meat or whatever. Let's say, I guess I just saw something at 14% are vegetarians, but so 85% of people. So your kids are very related to what it is. And if we're going to eat meat, we should be related to it. But it's the idea that if I just let the sheep go into the mountains, they would live to 14 years old. It's just not real.
Well, yeah, and didn't you have an issue with the sheep on your farm, even dogs,
All
and that's
got
kind of what.
killed by dogs, which is one of the things that woke me up to, like,
Yeah,
wow, nature is far harsher than anything that I could be doing. And my daughter, she's 7 years old, and she's completely a vegetarian. She eats eggs and she eats dairy, but she doesn't eat meat. But she's certainly been around, and she doesn't shy away from it, and she says a little prayer and she thanks it for, supporting our family and all of that. And she's 7 years old. And so either she's going to be a sociopath, or I'm creating someone that has a far better relationship with death than I was raised inside of.
right. Well, I think we just take everything so much for granted, and we're not looking at where our food comes from. And so now, being more connected with it and more grateful. I mean, I think I've never been hunting, but I know I've heard hunters talking about that. It's kind of a spiritual experience when you kill the animal, and then like you really appreciate it, and then you really like understand when you eat that meat, like you remember the experience of hunting it. And it's like, I mean, yeah, I think psycho would be like if you just killed an animal for fun, you didn't eat it, it wasn't for food or substance, like you were just killing it for fun. That's sick.
Right. And nobody's saying that that's a good idea.
Right.
But I guess that it's like a fundamental difference is that I don't think that genetically modified foods, ultra processed foods, and chemicals, ultra processed, and genetically modified foods are good for us. And
I
that's
don't
really,
either. Yeah.
and really that's where the vegan world and my world kind of had to go apart, because the vegan
Oh,
world is getting very much into the ultra processed foods.
really? Oh, yeah, because the Impossible Burger and stuff,
Think
right?
about all the meat alternatives.
Yeah. And you said you've never, even when you were fully vegan, you never served the fake meat.
I've never served it and I've never eaten it.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I agree. I think that's what's causing a lot of the sickness, the chronic diseases that we have. Is the chronic disease in this country is just skyrocketed, and you got to figure it's a lot of that is due to the processing of the ultra processing of foods.
Right. And that's why I think that people go vegan, they feel way better. They go carnivore, they feel way better. I think that keto, whenever someone goes to a highly restrictive diet, I think that they're eliminating much of the highly processed foods, and that's why they're feeling better. And then they're evangelizing from that perspective. The thing is,
Mhm.
I don't have any point of reference because I've never eaten ultra processed foods. Not like I've never eaten an ultra processed. It's never been like the majority of my diet. And
Sure.
I've never eaten meat. So my point of reference is like whole foods vegetarian. That's what I've been my whole life. But I've never, my mom never took me to fast food. I've never eaten a flaming Cheeto or anything like that. I don't know what that tastes like. And so I don't drink soda. I just never grew up, was never part of my ethos.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely a different, it's just so common for so many people. Like, I think some people don't have never eaten a vegetable, like they just only eaten ultra processed foods. And then you see the obesity rates skyrocketing too. And it's like, I don't know, you're right. Like, I feel like this should be the conversation that everyone's having around the dinner table, but like no one's talking about this. It's weird.
I know. And when I go to the grocery store in the little town I live here in Texas, I mean, I never buy food at this grocery store. There's nothing I want to eat. It's we buy bubbly water sometimes. My husband gets beer sometimes, and occasionally we buy cilantro
Huh.
because when we're no don't have any growing. But like
But you
it's
can grow everything else at your farm?
yeah, or we get it from Azure Standard. Have you heard of Azure Standard? It's from
No.
Oh, it's pretty cool. I bet you there's one close to you because it's up in Oregon. So it's a farm-based business, and they've collated all this organic food from all around the world, and you buy it direct from them. And so it's not a middleman. I mean, obviously a lot of it is they are the middleman, I guess, but there's no like box stores or anything.
Oh.
Basically, a semi truck comes to somewhere like a church or whatever. And if let's say you go to azure.com, you say drop near me, and it's like on Wednesday, whatever, it gets dropped at the Baptist church. And so you could order rice, and you could get a 5 pound of rice, a 1 pound of rice, or a 50 pound of rice. You could get grapes, you could get whatever, all organic stuff, meat and everything, and it will get delivered there, and everybody just meets at this place. And so the box store is not necessary, and they charge you individually for your stuff, and your stuff all comes with your name on it in that pallet, and the whole community in your area gathers, and everybody gets their milk, gets their juice, gets their whatever, puts in their car, and you've already paid, so there's nobody like gathering up the money or anything
Oh.
like that, but you're not paying for the box store and all that extra.
Okay. Yeah, I'm actually in Phoenix now, so I wonder if they have it down here.
For sure. We
Okay.
have one here on our farm, so they definitely Azure Standard, it's across the whole country. But you could get bulk, it's basically bulk organic food, and you could buy it in any increments of basically, and you could get a 5 pound bag of potatoes or a 50 pound box of potatoes.
So so you're in Texas now and you've still got two of the four restaurants in California operating, right?
Yes. Yeah, my husband just got back yesterday night from being there, and I'm gonna go next week. We're just trying to scooch it along.
Yeah, is there like so there's not like is there celebrity backers of these, or were they more supporting it when it was all vegan?
I mean, when I started, Jason Mraz and Woody Harrelson invested. Um, it's not like it's there. I don't know. It's not. It's it's not. I don't think they're not supporting or not supporting. I mean, it's just like one of their investments in a portfolio.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I heard you say something about Woody Harrelson because like your path is so interesting. Like you started in film school, and then you worked in the music business, and then you grew marijuana, and then you had a vegan ice cream, and then now you have the restaurant that was vegan, and then now it's like not vegan, and now you got the farm, and it's like you did all this cool stuff.
Yes, I had a lot of I keep picking hard ways to make money though.
It sounds like me with podcasting. It's not as easy as it. I mean, I think people know it's not easy. It's like one of the hardest things to do. Yeah, and I know that's with farming too. Like it's just really hard to make a profit, right?
Yes, very hard. But we're doing hospitality here and we've got this beautiful ranch and we're building a brewery right now on the ranch and then all the beer pulp will go to feed the cows. It'll be all a closed loop system. We're still raising the money for the hospitality brewery. We started already, doing everything, but we haven't finished raising the money. So I'm paused on building the brewery right now until I finish raising the money. But we're building and we're building a chapel too, so we can do weddings and stuff.
I'm assuming that's more lucrative having like event space and hosting weddings that could pay well, right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
We've already done some pretty big events and
Yeah, because that stuff gets expensive for sure, doing the weddings and stuff. So that's good. And then so you have the restaurant in Texas as well?
we have a restaurant on the ranch right now. It's only open on Saturdays and we're going to open more, but we're just little by little because it's staffing and it's not a very densely populated area. So I got to drag people out from San Antonio and start little by little.
Gotcha. And then explain the brewery thing, because I think the two restaurants in LA are breweries as well, right? Did you have to learn how to do all that, or did you just hire someone else to do it for you?
No, me and my brother-in-law from my first marriage and his girlfriend at the time, who is not his girlfriend anymore, but she's my head brewer now. We literally taught ourselves to brew beer. Kim, Trevor, and me every Monday, like some years ago, we were always like cooling down the wort in our pool, like carrying the pot out to the pool. So that we like workshopped all our recipes on the stove, like home brewing and learned like that. But we had to get a brewery because we couldn't get a liquor license in the neighborhood we were in. And so, but we got a liquor license, like a brewery that lets us serve liquor. And so that was part of navigating business and the bureaucracy.
Yeah, explain that, because I don't understand this. I mean, I hear things and rumors, and with California, it's tough to have a business, but you actually done it. So from what I've heard you talk about, it's like you had to get like 16 different licenses for not just like food license and liquor license, but all these other things. And then like your restaurant got raided because you made the hot sauce. I mean, I'm just picturing these FBI agents with guns drawn, like coming into your kitchen, like for the wrong hot sauce.
Not FBI agents, but they're like health and safety. Like, I don't know what they are, but yeah, they have badges and, um, yeah, the bureaucracy is out of control. There's nothing more confronting than doing business in California. And pre-pandemic, it was like bearable because we were all making money and the economy was doing good. Once it is how it is now, where we're losing money and then you think like, well, don't you want me to stay? I'm paying all these taxes and all this stuff and 16 different permits and blah, blah, blah. So you will be helping me because you understand how hard it's been post-pandemic. But no, it's not like that. I mean, I've talked about this on so many podcasts, but I got fined for selling. So in California, eucalyptus trees kind of grow everywhere along the sides of the highways and everywhere on the edges of the farm. We cut some branches of eucalyptus and put it in between the sunflowers bouquets at the farmer's market. And I got fined because I was selling something that I had it registered as something that I was selling.
How did they even catch you for that? That's amazing. Like,
They come and they look at your list and they look at your booth and they're like, somebody's paid to go to farmers markets and catch farmers for selling stuff. And because here's the thing, if you walk in, let's say she gets paid $65,000 a year, minimum salary exempt in California, or $68,000 a year. So if she goes to 2 farmers markets a day and then she catches 3 people at each farmer's market selling something or violating something that they're not supposed to, and they getting a $150 fine and up, depending on what it is, then she can raise, $900 a day for the county. I don't know what $900 a day is, but it's more than her $68,000 a year. I'm positive of that.
Right.
68 days after 68 days of her working, that it's a profit.
So it's like kind of like a racket, it seems like to me. Like,
Yeah, but it's not just her. Then there's the weights and measures people that come out and check your scales and make sure that your scales are working. And then there's the that's how I got caught with the hot sauce. We were selling hot sauce at the farmer's market from the restaurant, and then they said, like, well, where did you make this hot sauce? And then we're like, in a certified kitchen. Everything is on the up and up. And they're like, but you don't have a cannery license. And then yes, they raided the restaurant simultaneously so we couldn't get rid of any of the product. That's true. Like, imagine it was a sting. They're going to go to different restaurants and make sure that we don't.
it sounds.
By the ABC too. That I got brought to ABC court and they tried to take away my liquor license because when we first opened the brewery, it was the first weeks we were open. And the rules are really clear, is that you just have to be brewing a certain amount of 1,000 barrels a year, and you have to be selling the alcoholic beverage, the beer, let's put beer in quotation marks, on draft. So when we opened the brewery, my best friend and business partner passed away of cancer. So I was preoccupied. Kimberly was preoccupied. Trevor was preoccupied. We're all with our business partner passing away, her 9-year-old daughter, everything like that. But we opened the restaurant and we put the alcoholic kombucha, which the distinction of alcoholic kombucha on our license is beer. That's the distinction. They came in and raided our place and said we were utilizing the license in the wrong way. $500,000 of brewery equipment, all filled with beer with tags on it saying like Pilsner and this date and it needs to be pulled out and everything like that. It was just that week we only had kombucha on, and we just put some other people's beers on because there was no rule that I had to have multiple flavors of beer on. It's just how many barrels you sell a year. And the year had just started because we'd only been open for 3 weeks. And we got brought to court. We got fined. Literally, they wouldn't back down. We kept showing them the menu. We kept POS sales. And I can't remember like the end result, but I think that I had to go to multiple hearings and ended up going to a lesser fine for a lesser crime of like manipulating the liquor license. And yeah, no, we did. And we were on probation for 3 years. I remember that now. So these are the type of things. For another example, OSHA's for the whole world or the whole United States, but Cal OSHA is its own California OSHA. We had an injury, and on their website, on OSHA's website, you say you have to report the injury within 24 hours. In our workers' comp insurance packet that we keep at the restaurant, it says within 24 hours. We were well aware that we had to report the injury within 24 hours. I got brought up on charges for not reporting within 8 hours. I got fined. I'm still paying the fines. I don't know, it's like 300 and I don't know how much the total fine was, but we did the longest pay because it was no interest. So the longest pay that we could. So I'm still paying $309 a month for this. We reported the injury within 18 hours. And then we kept telling them, this is what it says on OSHA's website. Well, we're Cal OSHA. Well, when you Google like OSHA, whatever, our own workers' comp in California, even all the booklets that we had, it said you have 24 hours to report to OSHA for any injury. But California OSHA has their own rules separate from OSHA for the rest of the whole thing. And then we had to pay $9,000. So California does this thing where they make parts of your business illegal and then they fine you for it. And it's another way of taxation. And so
God,
I did nothing wrong and had to pay money and was on probation and had to get like lawyers to consult and everything for serving alcoholic beverages under the beer distinction on tap. But you don't even have to have it on tap. Then the lawyer went in, she doesn't have to be, because we were like showing it and they were like, it doesn't have to be on tap as long as it's in. And this, their whole point was, we had a little chalkboard up and it said, what's in the tanks today will be on the taps like tomorrow, like something like can't wait. And it said what, what was fermenting. And so they were saying we didn't have beer ready yet, and we opened without being able to serve our own beer, which is not true because we had the kombucha, and the kombucha is legal.
Oh, that sounds so confusing. Like I don't even know how to
Not
navigate
that
all that.
confusing. The rule kombucha falls under the distinction of beer under their own rules, and we were serving, because there's people that have the same license as me and they only sell kombucha. That's all they sell. So
Right.
it's crazy. But so these are things that they do to make part of your business illegal. And then that part of your business is illegal. They charge you. And for what? Because they want to have more taxation.
And then the raising the minimum wage, that doesn't, I mean, I get that for like if you're Walmart or something, you're making billions of dollars, but when you're a small business, I mean, isn't that really difficult to sustain? I mean, that's what you're struggling right now, right? To hang on even.
Yeah, I can't make payroll today. I'm having to hold people's paychecks till Monday. It's messed up. The thing is everybody wants their employees to be paid well. And 13 years ago, I had employees that were servers. They lived in Echo Park in nice apartments or houses with roommates. They made enough money to go on vacations, to do stuff, and have a good life from waiting tables at my restaurant, live in the neighborhood, eat at other restaurants in the neighborhood. And that all fit together. The ecosystem of the economics of the neighborhood fit together. When a studio apartment is $2,000, nobody can live in the neighborhood unless they live with their parents or whatever, some other circumstance, and work at my restaurant. And then if you do work at my restaurant and you're commuting from far away and your rent is so high, you don't have enough money to spend money in other restaurants in the neighborhood. So it's not all like fitting together and flowing. And so the idea that people should get paid more is a good idea. And naturally, good employees will rise to the top and they will get paid more. The reality is, just raising minimum wage does not make living conditions better. And that is what we have to realize, is that you can't just realize that one thing, top down approach, and I'm just going to change this one thing and that's going to make everything better, because it exponentially gets grown. Because if you are growing tomatoes and the guy that picked the tomatoes, let's go even further than that. You're growing tomatoes and the guy that harvested the tomatoes for your seeds for your tomatoes, his minimum wage went up, so your seeds went up. Now you took those seeds and the price of the seeds went up, you grew the tomatoes, and now you grow those tomatoes and you needed fertilizer, and everybody that made that fertilizer, their minimum wage went up, and so the fertilizer went up. And then the tomatoes get grown, but the diesel, everything was more money because everybody along the supply chain. So now those tomatoes get to the restaurant and they cost more money. And then it's exponentially happens. And so by adding money to minimum wage, it actually makes people's experience of life just about 6 months later that they have less money, because they got a dollar raise, but everything went up exponentially because you're paying for that minimum wage increase all the way along the supply chain. And so the idea, everybody deserves $10 an hour, everybody deserves $20 an hour. These are great ideas, but really what they deserve is the buying power of $10, $20, $30 an hour. That's what they deserve. And so raising minimum wage at the same time printing billions of dollars and giving it to the uber big companies is just a weird flex on small businesses. And that I don't understand it. Anybody that understands economics understands you can't print money and raise minimum wage and think that somehow that's going to serve the people or small businesses. It doesn't. It has everybody feel poorer, working harder, and small businesses going out of business, which are like 62% of the employers in the whole system.
Yeah, it's so sad to hear that. Yeah, because I love small business and I love what you're doing. I think it's like so. I wish we had more restaurants and like I try to buy the most, organics, like natural foods. Like I don't want anything that's made in a factory. And like you're making the real foods and having it in your restaurant. Like I would go there every week if I lived.
That's what I thought. And what I'm still hoping that people need to find out in their mind about me, they just don't know yet. But I mean, if I could go to a restaurant regularly that had no seed oils, all organic or regenerative food, I will be so stoked on that. I will feel safe.
Yeah.
My kids could eat whatever they want. That is just an extraordinarily awesome option.
Absolutely. I mean, it is going to be more expensive, but I think to me, I think, and I feel that way when I'm buying grass-fed beef and organic foods. I feel like, okay, well, I'm kind of investing in my health now. And so I don't have to like pay for a bunch of medical bills later because that gets really expensive. And so, and also you think of like for me at least, like I in my 20s and my 30s too, like I'd spend a lot of money going out to the bars and drinking beer and liquor and shit like that. And this is like cheaper than that. And it's like I feel a lot better not doing that. So I think it's a good, like if people want to feel good, just spend a little less money on alcohol and more on like their food.
I mean, I think that good food in most countries is 30% of people's income, and it's about 10 to 12% in our country. And so
Wow.
we haven't put the commitment there that it needs to be there.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, everybody wants this food, right? The organic or no chemicals or no pesticides, but we need farmers to do it and we need it to work for the farmers that are doing it. So how do we do that? We support it with our dollars every single day.
Well, and don't, what is the government? They subsidize something. Why don't they subsidize this? Because this I could get behind. I'd be like, okay, like it's going to be more expensive. So let's subsidize that this would be an investment in our health, like we wouldn't have to pay as much for the government healthcare later in life. I mean, you should see what these kids, I used to work in the schools, what the kids are eating in school lunches. I mean, these kids are all going to have health problems and then if they're on government free lunch, they're going to probably be on government free healthcare. So what are we doing? It seems like a bad investment.
It's designed that way, sir. I mean, big ag and big pharma are together, and it's all part of a system that has us be numb, dumb, compliant, and dependent.
I know. I'm starting to wake up, and then it's like, but then the problem is, then you try to wake other people up, and they're like, they think you're crazy or conspiracy theorist, and I'm like, no, I'm trying to help you. And they're like, oh, Chuck, he's crazy again. Oh, he's ranting things about organic foods. Oh boy, like he thinks chemical foods are bad or ultra processed foods. I'm like, I don't know. I try to tell people, I don't know what else I can do, like except do these podcasts.
I mean, here's the thing. You cannot wake people up before they're willing to be woken up. And there will be the moment. I mean, it's funny because I was crazy liberal, right? And then I would say now I'm kind of centrist. I say I'm a radical centrist because everybody's the radical left and the radical right. I'm a radical centrist.
Yeah, I think you're kind of libertarian. If a moderate libertarian, that's what I consider myself. I think you're kind of along those lines. Everything I've heard you say makes complete sense. So
my husband doesn't speak very good English, but then he does, like, in his Mexican accent, he does a Trump impression, and he's like, Sleepy Joe and the radical centrist. And I'm like, honey, there's no radical centrist. I was just like, I say, and he's like, oh, I thought that's not who Sleepy Joe is with. I'm like, no, the radical Democrats. He's like, oh, I thought it was the radical centrist. I said, because you're just listening to me talking on podcasts.
I like radical centrists. I want to be that too. I want to join you.
And the radical centrist. I'm like, no, honey. But anyways, so during COVID.
Yeah, this is interesting. I love this part too, because I have a lot of friends that were very liberal, and then the COVID thing hit, and they're like, they were pushing the vaccine, and these people are like, I eat organic, I'm all natural. Like, and I thought that was going to be like the left thing, that it was going to be, oh, we're anti-vaccine and we don't want vaccines because we're all natural and hip. And there are a lot of people like that. But then it was like the left was pushing the vaccine. I was like, oh, this seems like backwards to me.
That's how I felt. So I've never been vaccinated. My mom wasn't into it. My mom, via laziness or whatever, I was a home birth.
You never got anything, not even like the MMR or anything?
No.
Crazy. But your health is like really good, right?
I think I'm a little overweight. I just had 4 babies back to back, so I'm fat, but yeah.
But you don't get sick all the time, right?
I never get sick, and I just did like blood work for my health insurance, and I came back at my cousins were like, "You were in the 99 percentile of metabolic health for the United States," and I said, "Well, that goes to show you that they're not that healthy because I'm fat as fuck right now." but but because my cousin is a life insurance salesman, that makes more sense.
Interesting.
He was the one having that. But anyways, so wait, but so we're in the pandemic, and
Yeah.
I have my babies at home. I'm not vaccinated. I eat all organic. I don't trust the government, which I thought were left ideas, to be honest. And looking back, I realized that my parents voted for Reagan and Perot. So I guess that they were business owners. And so they were not very left, but I always saw them as very left because they like hippies and skinny dipping in the pond and doing ayahuasca or whatever. Like I had really,
yeah, again, that sounds like libertarian to me.
So I grew up in that. And so, but I identified as a Democrat. I would say that even though I was super pro personal choice and freedom and, I was pro all those things, I identified in my head, I saw myself as, and I was married to someone who was undocumented. So I got like kind of wrapped into the Trump hates your husband thing early on. And then that was it. Like, I was like, oh, he hates my husband. Why? I can't hear anything else that he has to say. Right. And so I'm just going along, but I hated Hillary. I hated Joe. So I was just like voting the independent, I was voting the whoever was the candidate that was not the Democrat. So, but I'm identifying in my head as a liberal, and COVID starts, and I'm going along doing COVID, and I'm assuming that all of my girlfriends are going to be like, "This is so dumb. Like, what is a mask made out of a t-shirt going to do for you? Like, this is crazy that they're saying we have to wear a mask." A Target mask made out of a t-shirt? Like, I don't understand. What is the science behind these masks that have a microfibers? I can feel them in my throat. Like, this is so bad, right? And my friends are like, we're not coming over for so-and-so's birthday party. My daughter's 3rd birthday party was so sad. It was just like us. And she was like, why can't my friends come over? And I was like, I don't know. I figured their parents were smarter than they are. I apologize. And so I'm going through life and my friends are all like shunning me. And I have Soul is now 4 and some months. So I have a baby, like born in just late November, almost December of 2019. So I have a baby, a 4-month-old baby when the pandemic starts. And I'm strapping this baby on and I'm going to the restaurants every day. We're pivoting. We're selling toilet paper. We're selling paper towels. Like, we're selling water bottles, whatever. I don't know.
And then you have to get like a license you had to serve food outside, but you had to get a license to serve food outside, or like,
Yes,
another thing.
Crazy, all the crazy. But
Oh,
so we're going to all 4 restaurants every day, me and my husband, my personal assistant, and Nicholas, who's like he does everything, but I think his technical term is like, he does all like aesthetic and design stuff. So the 4 of us are in my van. We're going to all 4 restaurants every day. And the first couple of days, I guess that I'm scared because I'm like, this is crazy. I have my baby out here and a nanny because I'm having breastfeeding. So we're driving every day and I'm like a little scared the first couple of days. And I remember we would go in the back door through the laundry room and take our clothes off when we got home and change clothes before we snuggled the other kids or whatever. And one day I walked in the front door, I had to pee, and my son runs up to me to give me a hug. And I'm like, no, don't touch me. and I saw on his face like how sad he was that I didn't want him to touch me because I was just walking through the door. And like I just in that moment was like, absolutely not. We're not doing this. We're not going to be afraid of some invisible virus. God has us protected. We have immune systems. We have terrain. Our bodies are great. And I was like, I'm sorry, Bubba. Come here. Give me a hug. Give me a kiss. And from that moment on, I was like, this shit is stupid. Like I just felt
I like
like
it. That's the thing that made I like that. Yeah, that's
and so I'm going through life and I'm thinking some of my girlfriends are going to come to this conclusion. And then the vaccine thing starts. So this is early. There's not even a vaccine. It's
oh,
like, and
okay.
I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not, people are like, oh my God, you're putting
That must
every,
have been so hard in California. I can't imagine.
oh no, my own employees called OSHA on me. It was crazy. And the weird thing is my baby would not breastfeed while I had the mask on. And so
Really?
it was so weird. He just kept pulling and pulling it. Like he couldn't, there was some weird disconnect while I was wearing a mask. He
But
hated
then you
it.
take the mask off and he's
He
fine?
breastfeed fine.
Fascinating. Wow.
And that son, he's fine now, but he was super delayed because he was in the restaurants with everybody with a mask on for
Mm.
months and months and months. And he was delayed speaking. And then we took him to a speech therapist, and the speech therapist said, oh, he's actually fine. There's so many much worse cases where people don't even know how to hold their mouth so that their saliva stays inside their mouth, because you learn all of these things by watching. Like there's muscles in your mouth that get developed by watching other people. And so people had masks on and they had their kids on, and then they were wearing masks. I don't know, maybe at home, I have no idea. But like kids were not being developed. And my son was so far behind. And then that was the other crazy obvious thing. They changed the developmental during COVID, like first words and all that stuff got pushed back to 18 months. I'm like, first word has been 9 months forever. And all of a sudden, first word is 18 months. Like, you don't think that's a little weird, a little suspect? My friends are like, you're just such a conspiracy theorist. So I'm going through life and I think, and I start, I start hearing these things and Trump saying to take bleach. I'm like, is this really what he's saying? So I start reading because I'm trying to figure out what are we doing with the restaurants? How are we getting out of this? So I start reading the transcripts of Trump things and I realize that we've been lied to. Like he's not saying any of the things that we're hearing that he's saying. They're just clipping it together to make him sound. He's bombastic and he likes himself too much and all that stuff. But but the, but he's not as stupid as we've all been told that he is, and he's not saying these things that like drink bleach and it's going to kill the virus or whatever people are saying he says. So that's the first thing that's so weird. And then the second thing is Tucker Carlson is the only person on TV saying it's okay to not get vaccinated, basically. And so then I start listening to Tucker Carlson and everybody's like, why are you, I want to punch him in the face and I just hear his voice. Why do you have that on? Like, I hate him. And I'm going, but he's saying that it's okay not to get vaccinated. And I agree with that. So I'm just going to check out what other things he's saying. And then I'm like, it's 8 o'clock on Fox News and he's saying that Kennedy was assassinated by the CIA. Anybody else think this is interesting? Like, this is pretty interesting. And we're like, it's Tucker, like, he's a blah, blah, blah. And Tucker derangement syndrome is like Trump derangement syndrome. It's like people can't even hear him. It'd be like, he's not even a good listener. He talks over everybody. And I'm like, so weird because he's actually a really good listener. Like I watch him, he never talks over anybody. And unless he's like fighting with them, but like mostly when he's interviewing people. So, anyways, this goes on, and I start to think we got to learn to love people we disagree with, and we got to start to agree with people. We need to learn to love people we don't disagree with. And we also need to learn to agree with people that we think we don't like. And that was my big lesson. And so all of a sudden I'm listening, and then Candace Owens makes an anti-vax documentary. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. I thought these people were terrible. And all of a sudden I'm realizing I don't even know who I am. I was just completely, I was like left out there with no people. Like, who are my people? Because, and then when the vaccine came, I was like, well, now everybody's not going to take this crazy rushed out mRNA technology, not even a vaccine. And we know nobody's going to take this. And then everybody was just like lined up to take it. And I was like, this is so crazy. And now everybody's acting like, well, we didn't know. No, like literally we all knew. We did know. The information was totally there and we all knew.
It was scary. It was scary stuff. The whole like that's when I started like watching the news and paying attention. I used to never watch the news, but when I saw people wanting to kill each other over a roll of toilet paper, I was like, something's going on here. This is I got to start figuring out what's going on in the world. Like this is some scary stuff.
It is. And so that was, and then we adopted a kid from Guatemala who came across during the Trump administration as an unaccompanied minor. And his version of what it was like to be apprehended at the border and put into the US custody and like what I'd seen on the news was so different. I realized like we're just being lied to all the time.
So it wasn't in a cage or whatever that they say that.
His words were like this. They treated me like a king. His words, they treated me like a king. Huh. He goes, we'd been weeks with coyotes, like not knowing where, like terrible fear. And all of a sudden we were like secure and had food and clean and completely taken care of. And then they were trying to reach out to his parents and they, totally not the story that I had been sold about how he was in a cage with scabies, basically, and nobody had soap or toothpaste.
Right. Yeah, no, because I think they show you the worst on both sides. They'll show you the worst things that are going on in the world. Like even in California, like I see a lot of this stuff like smash and grabs and all that. But like last time I went to California, I mean, I didn't see that in real life. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but maybe it's not as common as they make you think.
Yeah, I do think they show the worst on both sides, 100%. California is pretty bad right now. Like
because you live there. So
the 3 like drugstores in the neighborhood where my restaurant is have gone out of business because the smash and grab thing is so intense. So
damn. And I mean it's part of the reason that you left, right? I mean that's why you moved to Texas.
I mean I moved to Texas because that experience of being breastfeeding and then pregnant. I mean, because COVID lasted a long time in California, longer than other states.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. We didn't have better results on the death, though, so I'm not. I don't quite understand, but it lasted a long time in California. But being pregnant and not being allowed to go pee if you don't show your papers, being screamed at the dollar store for not wearing a mask. It was hard for me to feel like there was sanity. Or the other thing is people would just wear their masks below their nose.
Or like, do you ever see when they're eating with the mask and then they lift it up and they take a bite and then they put it like, that's like extreme to me.
It's all so extreme. And now Fauci just like literally in Congress says like it was made up. No, we didn't have any evidence that masks.
It never made sense. Even at the time, it was a thing where it was like, you go to a restaurant, you have to wear a mask. You sit down, you could take the mask off.
But when you get up to go to the bathroom,
you have to put the mask back on. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I feel like everyone that followed the rules, that we all ended up getting COVID anyways. Like, I think it did maybe delay some of it, but we all ended up getting COVID. I don't understand why they didn't just say, look, if you're like whatever, like age 10 to 35, go out, get COVID. You're going to be fine. If you don't have any underlying conditions. And then
that was literally me. I'm like, I'm healthy. I'm 45 years old. I just had a baby. Only way out is the way through. Let's go. Right. But here's the worst part. There's never been a vaccine for COVID because the common cold is COVID. Like this is something that's always going to be shifting and changing. And you only get immunity for a short period of time. So the idea of a vaccine never made any sense to me.
Well, they're getting the version of it that's like the old, by the time they make the virus or the vaccine from the old virus, the virus is already mutated into something else. So yeah, you have protection against that strain of the virus that's not out there anymore, right? I mean, that's the way I understood it.
I think that is true, but I'm just saying it's not like chicken pox where you get it once and then you have immunity. So, I mean, I never took the flu shot because of that. I mean, I never took any shots because I don't trust pharmaceutical companies.
I don't
And
either. Neither does
don't
a
get me
lot of my.
wrong, like if you break your leg, knock on wood, I've never broken my leg, but I had a broken coccyx bone that blocked my son from coming out on my first pregnancy. And thank God I could go to the hospital and they could go and break my coccyx bone and pull him out with forceps. Like, thank God for that. But does that mean that every mother should have their baby in a hospital? Absolutely not. It means in a rare occasion, when you got in a car accident and flipped a car and broke your coccyx bone and it healed pointing backwards towards the baby's head, then you got to break your coccyx bone to get the baby out, then yes. But ultimately, the idea that we've medicalized everything, I was just talking, my assistant just said, I'm not going to be able to work this afternoon. I have to take my mom to the hospital. She wants to go to the doctor. And I said, oh, I hope she feels better. What's going on? And she said, oh, she got anxiety from the fireworks last night. And I was like, okay. And so she feels stressed out. And I'm like, okay, what's the doctor gonna do? Like, drink some chamomile tea? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't what is that? Like, so we've come to a world where we think everything is medicalized. And
Right. Well, there's
birth,
this revolution too that I feel like I don't know. I don't think it's political even. I feel like it's just like getting back to like organic foods and now like I think you even talked about this like grounding, like putting your feet in the ground. This is like a healthy thing. Like all these getting sunshine. Sunshine was no, you got to stay out of the sun, you'll get cancer. And now people are like getting out in the sun and they're like, "Oh, I actually like feel a lot better when I get sunshine." It's this weird thing.
oh no, I'm all the time with my kids, like, okay, we're gonna and we feel ground our feet on the ground and then feel the electricity of the earth, feel the electricity of God coming up through us, and same in the shower, feel the electricity of the water and God coming through us. Like I'm always talking about this, like get out in the sun, let's go do something. But we pharmaceutical companies are wanting to create repeat customers just like I want to create repeat customers. And if there was some way that I could get you to get a What's Possible burger, bison, What's Possible burger from Sage, and then you would want to come back or you would have to come back for that burger forever,
Is that
twice
what
a
the
week.
burger's called? What's possible?
Yes. And do you know that no press has picked up on how genius that is?
I thought that was I know I thought I had to think about it for a second, but then I was like, wait, that's like a really good name.
An excellent name.
I love it. Yeah, that's so. I think your kitchen. I
And
mean, I
I was
won't go
waiting for
there.
the impossible people to sue me so that then
I love that you've never served the fake meat, even though you're a vegan. I love that so because like I don't care if you're vegan or carnivore. Like, please just eat real foods. I try to tell people, and they think I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm like, don't eat the ultra processed foods. Like, there's
I
even
don't
a
understand
study
how
that
can it be a conspiracy theorist? Okay, 50, 100 years ago, none of this stuff existed. My
right.
grandparents, I don't know how old you are. I'm 46 years old.
I'm 46 too.
Excellent. So my grandparents, I had one grandpa that died before I was born, lung cancer. But my grandmother died at 96 years old couple years ago. Now, my grandma drank Crown and Coke and she ate eggs and bacon for breakfast every single morning,
Yeah.
but she ate mostly real foods. You know what I'm saying? Like she ate some pasta as far as like processed, but like mostly she ate not organic even, not but she
Does
ate
she have real butter or the margarine?
real butter. And so she lived to be 96 years old, drinking a Crown and Coke that's like this big. Like nobody should drink a
I
Crown and Coke.
love Crown and Coke. Crown and Diet for me, but yeah, that's probably worse.
It's way worse. Um, but anyways, so she lived to be 96 years old. My grandfather on my father's side lived to be 91, and my other grandma, I think 94. She died the night that Trump was elected. And my grandma was like a super Democrat, and everybody joked she was a Democratic delegate and everything. And they
Wow.
were like, everybody joked that she couldn't live in a world that Trump was the president. But I don't think that that's why she died. She was 94 and had dementia and
Oh.
was in the hospital already and she passed away. But so 91, 94, 96, and then I have one that died at 60 or something from lung cancer. So the genetics say that, you know, but they all ate whole foods, and even all the ultra processed foods came up. And like my grandparents would eat, they would have some stuff in their house that it's like processed food, like crackers to eat with cheese before dinner time or something like that. But mostly they ate real food. We went to the grocery store, we didn't buy packages, we bought real food, and they made desserts every night, but it was from scratch, right? You know, like everything from scratch. And they lived a very, 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 very long time. And if you go on my husband's side, 96 years old, his grandpa died, indigenous, eating the traditional indigenous diet in Mexico of corn, beans, dried fish, turtle eggs, and lard. But his father, the road didn't get into that area until 1991. And then we were just there. His father passed away recently, and his brother was killed, so it doesn't count. It's not for that. Well, we were there recently for a funeral. The amount of people that have diabetes in the small indigenous village where my husband is from is terrifying. And if you go into the little stores, there's nothing but ultra processed food and like a few tomatoes and a few fish in the freezer or whatever, but it's all ultra processed food now. And so in a matter of since 1991, when there was no road to that village, to now, they went from a 0% ultra processed food to like 95% ultra processed food. And his father just passed away of natural causes at 67 years old. So the generation before lived 30 something years more than this. And so we're all in this generation where we're going to be one of the, like, human life expectancy was getting longer and longer and longer, and now it's getting shorter.
Yeah, that's scary.
And it's scary.
But I think, yeah, with the diabetes too, especially in the chronic disease, all that stuff's connected. I mean, I just tell people, I mean, do what feels right for you. But like, I know for me, like just eating real foods, and I eat meat and fruit and vegetables. And I mean, I probably eat some slightly processed stuff, but I mean, I just feel so much better eating cleaner like that and exercising and getting sunshine. Like those three things has made a huge difference. And also I cut out alcohol for the last 2 months, which has helped too, I think. But yeah, all those things, it helps me feel better. I just say, you know, tell people, try that and see how it feels. But definitely the processed food, I feel like that's the worst thing.
It is. And it's hard with kids because they just get addicted to, you know, and I don't have very many processed foods, but then it's like, okay, organic pasta or something. It's like, that's slightly processed or whatever. But then all they want to eat is pasta. If I would let my kids eat just pasta, yogurt, fruit, and granola and toast, they would. That would be perfectly okay with them. And that's not perfectly okay with me. But then I have other people come over, they're like, honestly, Molly, like organic sourdough bread that you baked from scratch and yogurt, raw yogurt that from your own cow that you made from scratch. Like it's not that big of a deal. It's not that bad.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah, isn't there talk about that thing with the sourdough? This is interesting because I know like there's a big push for fermented foods and how and the gut microbiome and stuff. And so that if you do like real sourdough bread, not like the fake that tries to mimic the flavor, but there's like a real process to make it like real sourdough with fermentation and stuff, right?
Yeah, my husband bakes sourdough bread twice a week for the family, and we sell some in the farm store. And we made our sourdough starter here in Texas from the yeast on the outside of the juniper berry. And that's a wild yeast that's here and thrives in this environment. There's all different, you know, different starters that you can make and lots of different ways to use fruit or to just use the air or whatever. But yes, when you eat food that's already been fermented, it's already pre-digested and it's way better for your body, and you have significantly less of a spike in your insulin. And also the amount of gluten, and that's why we think people are so gluten intolerant, is it's like 200 parts per million of gluten in fully fermented sourdough bread versus 2,500 parts per million in bread that's just pitch yeast, the kind of yeast that you don't ferment, that you're just, the yeast is just going to make it rise. And so that's a pretty significant difference amount of gluten. And so when everybody's gluten intolerant, my question is, are you gluten intolerant, or should the gluten be fermented? Or are you just intolerant of the glyphosate that's in all of our gluten or all of our wheat, which I would say those two things combined, that we stopped making bread in the traditional way. And so I love naan bread, but I can't go to an Indian restaurant and eat naan bread anymore. It's just like a belly bomb, like, ugh. I can't, I'm like so tired afterwards, and it's such a belly bomb. But when we make naan, I'll make like bagan barta and lentils and rice here on the farm, and we make naan bread, garlic naan with sourdough organic flour. It's totally different, and it tastes very similar, but it's a totally different experience in the body.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense, because that is weird. This whole gluten intolerant thing is like this, like people, it's almost like a fad, but it makes sense if we've changed the way we make bread.
Well, also in 1996, we started spraying our grains. So I don't know if people understand what glyphosate or Roundup
That
does.
shit scares the hell out of me.
It kills a plant. And so when it was developed, it was never thought to be sprayed on something to kill a plant, because it was going to be sprayed around plants so that it would kill the plants that you didn't want, and
Mhm.
that would leave the plant you did want, right? And then they invented corn and soy that's Roundup ready, which means you can spray Roundup on it and it kills everything else, but doesn't kill the corn and the soy. Well, then some very ingenious chemical salesman came up with the idea, sorry for yawning, came up with the idea, well, why do we have to wait for perfect conditions of sun and light and dry for the wheat to dry out? If you want to harvest your wheat next week or in 2 weeks, just spray it with Roundup today. It'll dry crispy to a crisp, and then you can harvest it, combine harvest it. That's true for oats and barley and everything now. Well, the problem with that is that's not how we studied it. And I'm not even saying that whoever studied it did a good job of saying whether it was healthy or not, but we didn't need it to be sprayed directly on the food 14 days. It's like you can't spray it around the bottom of a lemon tree within 14 days of picking the lemons, is the way it was envisioned. But what we're doing, and it's never gone back for any, is we're spraying it directly onto oats, wheat, barley, all. And so a lot of our food has crazy high levels of Roundup in it. And people say, oh, well, it doesn't matter because Roundup doesn't hurt the human body. Well, okay, let's say that's true, because we don't have a shikimate pathway, and the way that Roundup works is by killing the shikimate, drying out the shikimate pathway. But the microbiology that is keeping us alive, keeping our immune system intact, keeping our guts healthy, that has a shikimate pathway. All that microbiology is being killed off. And then we're getting what I call the industrial microbiome, what can withstand that. But that's not, then we're having all these problems in our gut and leaky gut and all that, on and on and on, because we've killed off the microbiology. And then we're not eating the foods that are coming from healthy soil to replenish it. And so it's just on and on and on, where it's a mass extinction event of the microbiology in our gut. And now people are doing fecal transplants, all types of stuff to try to get
I
their
saw
microbiome.
that. That's so weird. Yeah, I saw there's that movie on Netflix about, and they showed
I
that.
saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it now, talk about, what are your thoughts on like the peanut allergy thing? Is that a similar kind of problem, or where is that coming from? Because when I was a kid, nobody was allergic to peanuts, and now everyone's allergic to it, and like
I
they
think
can
it's a
die from it.
I think it's a vaccine thing. They're using peanuts as an adjuvant in a lot of vaccines in the childhood vaccine schedule, but also allergies are if our total terrain in our body is not healthy, then of course we're going to have more allergies. Our body's going to overreact to stuff.
Mm.
And there is some microbiology that actually calms inflammation, and if we don't have a healthy amount of that, then of course that's going to cause a problem. But I think much of the allergy stuff is the adjuvants that we're using, in the vaccines.
Yeah, that's really fast. I'm gonna have to have somebody on to talk about that. I had Dr. McCullough on to talk about the COVID one specifically, but just in general, I'm curious about, because like I saw some statistic. I don't know if this was true. I didn't fact check it, but it was like in the 80s they gave kids like 7 vaccines or something, and then now it's like 96, which is crazy to me. I'm like, how could there be 96 vaccines for kids?
Yeah, I saw 42 in the last schedule, but some might have two parts to it, or you might have
Oh,
that's apart or something like that. So I don't know. Dr. Zach Bush is a good person to talk to about that.
okay. I'll look that up. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. So the two restaurants are still open in Los
Yes,
Angeles.
come
Yeah.
out, Pasadena, Echo Park. Let's go have a what's possible burger, or
Yes.
just come and have a kale salad, whatever you want. I'm open to free choice for food options and the highest quality of options in any carnivore to vegan raw. We have something for you.
And then you've got the ranch that you're at in Texas, and that will eventually be, well, there's a restaurant, but it's only open one day a week, but you're kind of
Yep, and
expanding it.
but we do events, weddings,
Yeah.
family reunions, and all different types of things. We have 40 beds on the ranch and the restaurant. We have yurts, we have tiny houses. So, come on out if you have some kind of retreat and join us, and we'll let me do the cooking and you just enjoy the ranch. And also,
Awesome.
if you're interested in getting invested in regenerative businesses, we're working on raising the final money for the ranch, for the brewery and hospitality component.
You got to get on Rogan. We need to get you on Rogan. Do you have any
Yeah,
connection to that?
I don't. I really want to be on Rogan.
I think
That's one
you'd
of
be
my goals for 2020 four. So if you could help visualize that role for with me, I'm all for it. People have to, I think you have to I heard that you have to tag things that I'm saying on Instagram and say at Joe Rogan, you should talk to her.
Oh.
That's what I heard, but I don't know.
Okay, yeah, because I just think I see like this message and what you're doing. I think is so. I don't know of anyone else doing this kind of farming, and I think it's so important. I think this is the future. I think it was our past, and then we've forgotten about it. We need to get back to this, as opposed to the factory farming with chickens stacked on each other, pooping and all that, breaking legs.
There's a lot of good farmers doing this work. And Joe Rogan has been lifting up their stories. He's had Will Harris on and other people on. So I
Okay,
think that he's excited about this is what the future could be if we step into our role as the keystone species. And we have the power to do that.
absolutely.
I think that we're asked to do so in the Bible. And I don't know about other scriptures because I'm not as familiar. I'm only familiar with the Bible, but I bet they ask us in the other scriptures to step into that role too. But in the Bible, they say that, what our responsibility is.
Absolutely. No, it all makes sense to me. Well, thank you again so much, and people can follow you. And again, the restaurants are in LA and the ranch in Texas. I love it.
Yes, thank you. Please, Chef Mollie on Instagram, or Sovereignty Ranch on Instagram, or The Kind Sage on Instagram. Follow along our journey, and thank you so much for listening. And reach out if you want to do any business together.
All right. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.